Conservation Commission for October 9th, 2018. We're going to start with our continued hearings. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. There will be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent by Daniel Wolf from David E. Ross Associates for the addition of a concrete slab, addition of a loading dock, and filling and replicating a wetland area. This work takes place within a 100-foot buffer zone, address 320 Industrial Road, map 255, lot 32, DEP 199, 1047. Someone representing the applicant.
Yes.
Oh, did I say it wrong?
Dyslexic.
Oh, 1074.
Good evening. I approached the board up here, correct?
Yeah, great.
My name is Dan Wolf. I'm with David Ross Associates, representing 320 Industrial LLC tonight. This is the property of New England Apple Products Company at the very end of Industrial Road. There's an existing approximately 34,000 square foot building on the site shown here, and we're proposing the addition of about a 20,000 square foot slab that is going to serve as open outdoor storage. On that slab, we're also proposing to put a large cooler to supplement the interior cooler space in the building. There will be a loading dock on the south side of the building here, accessed through the front driveway and down the side of the building. The slab itself is within the buffer zone, and as you'll note, there is a small finger-like projection of wetlands that come into the property, and we did have a site walk the other day. You saw that. We really don't know how or why that formed. There was a question of are there roof drains or anything like that happening, and we've examined this area and didn't see anything flowing out of there. It just seems to be a natural occurrence. But in this project, we are proposing to fill that area, and we've provided replication out along the wetland area to the back here. The stormwater management was such that we have sized a infiltration area to the rear as well as the side that will be below the gravel access road that wraps around the back of the building. We've submitted all of the drainage calculations for that, and I do know that they were examined by the DPW. I'm assuming that you got the DPW memos as well. Did you get that, Angela?
No, we didn't have service last week, so they sent it last meeting.
All right. No, I think they sent it.
Oh, you mean DEP?
Nope, the DPW. They had some questions about the drainage report itself, and so we have addressed that. In fact, for your files, I brought along a letter that we provided to the planning board, and it would apply equally to you in terms of the revisions that were made to the plan to address those concerns. And you want a copy of that? It just goes through. I've even typed out the questions that the DPW department had and how we're responding to them. So I'll just run through a few things. This is Mark Peramarini that was asking the questions. He was wondering how erosion would be controlled from storm water running off this slab, and we talked about how this is a gravel driveway and there's a berm on the back side of it to contain everything, and all of that runoff is being picked up by catch basins. So once that was shown to him, he simply asked for a detail that shows how that gravel driveway is formed, and we've added that to page 2 of the plans. The second question had to do with soil testing, which we didn't get an opportunity to schedule that with him until that is being conducted this week. It'll be done Friday morning to verify the results that were, the assumptions that were made in the drainage report. We have also provided a cross-section on page 2 of the plans that go into further detail about the elevations of this infiltration system itself. And we've clarified the forebay question that we had, where the one of the lines of this drainage system is called an isolator row. It is wrapped with filter fabric and thus serves as like a forebay to a typically open basin. And then he was questioning some turning radiuses up here. And then the sixth and seventh question that he had really have to do with building code issues, and we had asked that those not be part of the review here for the site plan, but those would be handled by the building inspector at the time that the architectural drawings were being submitted. We did have a site walk, as I mentioned the other day, and we did walk out here. We talked about the fact that there's an area of clearing through the back. And I wanted to point out that part of this slab on the northerly side of the building is within the 30-foot no-work zone. And I wanted to address that from the standpoint that that area currently is a fairly barren area. It's had many years of use in this area. There's no tree growth in that area. In fact, there's still some remains of a railroad siding that used to come in and actually enter right into the back of the building. So this is a completely disturbed area right now, and by us putting this slab here, we'll actually stabilize this area, and we'll be performing the stabilization around that slab, kind of restoring that area to something a little bit more decent than what it is now. So if I can answer any of your questions, I'd be happy to.
For the commission members that were not on the site walk, obviously we had one. We did witness the wetland area they're proposing to fill. It's kind of a shallow trench or shallow swale, I guess. Definitely wetland. We did examine the area that they're talking about replication. From my opinion, it looks like a decent spot to do so. My only concerns during the site walk was that slab's going to be extremely close to that river / brook / whatever that is on the side right there. So, you know, we can talk about erosion control when that comes that time. And what he's talking about with that railroad is it's an old railroad bed, so it's definitely disturbed. Let's put it that way. So that's what I saw. Paul, if you want to mention anything else that...
No, I agree.
So...
There was a question about ratio of replicated wetland to wetlands that are being filled. Where do we stand with that?
Right. When it was brought up at the site walk, you said that you saw that I had replicated the amount of area filled here, and that sometimes you like to see 150%. So I actually did the calculations, and we have slightly less than 125%. So we're somewhere in the middle there. You had said, you know, you're speaking for yourself, not the whole board, when it was brought up. So if there's any opinions there, we can hear them out.
I think you said it was like 1,000 and some change versus 1,200.
What we're filling is 1,042 square feet, and what we're filling is 1,272, which, like I said, is about 125%. So I didn't know whether or not the board as a whole would want to do even more disturbance up in this area here. We do have an area that we could continue to excavate out to create a bigger wetland area, but is that necessarily what the entire board wants? I don't know.
Comments or questions?
Did you receive the comments from DEP, from Megan Selby?
I did not, no.
I have a copy of them right here. Their comments were that a discussion of how the project meets performance standards under 310 CMR 10.554 is required. Emphasis should be placed on how the BVW impacts have been avoided and minimized before mitigation was proposed as required. And they also put in here that the applicant must provide detailed information consistent with the replication checklist found under the DEP replication guidelines. You have copies, I do.
You've got another
Yeah.
copy of that? I did not receive that.
Yeah, Riverback's plans.
I did realize, Brad, as I came here tonight, I don't have new prints of this plan.
So
This is-
they haven't been submitted yet?
No.
Oh, okay.
So these revisions were conducted on October 1st. And that was to address the DPW concerns. So I meant to bring copies tonight. I can get those to you.
Can you just describe the infiltration system that you're proposing?
The system itself, what we're looking for is really two things. One, we're looking for a place for storage during the event itself, as well as we're looking for the ability to infiltrate the water that is collected over time. So what we chose to work with is the Cultex chambers that do provide, they're a concave plastic chamber, gets set in the ground. These catch basins here lead toward the larger system here. Another catch basin leads to the smaller system. Those chambers themselves, again, provide the storage volume that we're talking about. They have an open bottom as well as perforations along the side. There's a number of details here that come directly from the manufacturer to show how they lay out in a bed or a trench type of area. And so the sizing has been performed through the drainage calculations to make sure that the increase in runoff is captured and attenuated within the drainage system itself, and simply infiltrates back into the ground over time.
So the runoff from the slab is designed to be caught by those catch basins?
Yes.
It's going to be all pitched to...
Right. As water runs off the edge of the slab, it comes onto this gravel driveway, and as I mentioned, it's sloped away from the building, and then there's a berm. And that berm is leading all the water down on both sides to these catch basins here, which get it into the underground system. I turned the page, by the way, thinking it'd be a dramatic view, but as you can see, it printed fairly lightly there, so
that's all right.
I had nothing major to show. But that's basically what it is. We've got two lines of those set aside in a bed type of system.
Okay.
I have a quick question on the wetland filling area. Are you going? You're proposing to pull it all the way back to the existing? Well, what would be the wetland line? Having that finger light projection up in there?
That is what is proposed, and I did that trying to respect the fact that you wanted no more activity within 30 feet of the wetland. We could actually stop the filling right here at the end of the activity, but then my 30-foot line that I tried to depict here would be within this area here. I didn't know whether you wanted it done that way or simply leave this wetland area alone because we have no need, there's no filling of that for the construction itself.
We don't have a bylaw or an ordinance in this town, so there is no 30-foot. I don't know if that was just something that was discussed.
No,
I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, I don't...
Not for Leominster.
Okay.
We've seen it on other plans here, though, so somebody's is either misinformation or there's something out there.
I want to say I saw something
Yeah.
on the website.
I've seen it from other companies submitting plans here, so it's...
Well, good for you. You've got people out there trying to respect 30 feet. So yeah, we can decrease the area of filling here, which would make that more in line with the percentages that we're looking for.
It's where the slab is, Larry, just... that slab's basically going to be all fill.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a pretty dramatic slope, so it's kind of... It's going to be like a wall. Basically, it can go into the wall and stop, is what I would imagine, just from the site. Because from that wetland to the top of the slab, about I want to guess 5 or 6 feet of fill.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It's quite a bit. You'll know what was fill and what wasn't
The
fill.
property currently is fairly flat in the back of the building, but then from this point on, has quite a, I don't want to say dramatic,
Yeah,
but it slopes downhill here, and then it's just more gradual
Yeah.
in through this area. But we do have to overcome that drop right through there,
Right.
about 4 or 5 feet.
And there's gonna be vehicles on the slab,
Just like a forklift, that's about it.
so like in the wintertime, does it just not get?
There would still be some use of that area, certainly much less because the Apple products business certainly isn't thriving during December, January, and February. In fact, this is the season of their intense use where they really could use that storage, and that's usually done by the end of November, that a lot of that activity is winding down at that point.
I'm just thinking of where snow is gonna go because you got a wetland so close. You got, so there's a stream there too, so.
Yeah, but
We don't want anything going off the concrete slab towards the wetland.
Toward this area.
Is there a berm or anything at least to capture, to contain any?
There is not on the slab itself, although that's going through the architectural phase right now, where building code may require some sort of berm, but certainly I know it would require a guardrail. You don't want the forklift to be taken
Yeah,
off.
okay. Yeah, as long as there's something to prevent debris from being pushed into that, I mean, it's right on top of the wetland. That's my biggest concern.
would you even plow that in the winter?
Yeah, early storms, early storms before the new year, probably. We intend to have empty apple crates stored out there that need to get back to the growers eventually. So, yeah, if we get a early December storm, we're gonna wanna clear some snow.
And I would imagine that clearing would go off toward the back here.
It's gonna be the most natural way to send it, yeah.
And we created this gravel drive around the back simply to facilitate getting back there a few times every few months for general service or cleanup perhaps. There's no real facility needs to have that driveway back there. In fact, you had met with the fire department, correct? And they had no real need for it. They said if you're going to provide access, it would be nice if you had the radius for us to get a truck around here. So we did accommodate that, but they were not demanding the need for full access to the back. So if we are pushing some snow off the back, it might be there for a little bit.
So your activity on that slab will be basically from in the building out to there and back into the building?
Correct.
Okay.
And or, on and off that loading dock proposed.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you're not be,
And then everything being
There's
done.
nothing.
you're not gonna be coming off the gravel road onto the slab all the time?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't anticipate much activity along that gravel road at all.
Okay.
It's mainly just to replicate the condition we have right now, where there's kind of an access way around the back of the existing building.
Right. Okay. How much questions? Huh?
My turn?
Yeah, your turn.
What's on site for existing drainage right now?
Existing drainage in terms of catch basins, piping, things like that.
That and also where does the roof drainage go?
There is a roof drainage pipe that comes out the side of the building. To be honest, I never even saw that pipe until the day of the site walk.
Okay.
When we walked through in the rain and
Because it was
saw that
raining.
big- And what happens is it comes out of that pipe
Yeah.
that's in the ground and runs down what looks like a very natural channel, or at least a channel that's been there for quite some time, heading down toward the wetlands. I didn't see any other roof drain outlets, and we were certainly there at a time where it would have presented itself. So it's just this one off the side here that seems to promote flow right down the property line.
And the parking lot in the front of the building, does that run off heading towards the back of the site or towards the street?
I believe most of the parking lot heads off toward that same
Same area?
side of the building and swales off down
I
there.
think that's what GIS was showing. So.
Okay. And the building's been there since, what'd you say, 74?
Mid-'70s, I
So
believe it
it's
was
probably
constructed
been
in '74.
running off that way for decades now. It did, the pipe that we did see putting out some water didn't show any sort of scouring or erosion in that, so that's why I say it's quite an established area. It's in quite lush.
It was
vegetation.
pretty vegetated, of scrubby consistency, but yeah.
So I just quickly went also through the DPW comments. I had some of the questions on what was being done for pretreatment other than the catch basin. I didn't realize you had that isolator row
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, that wasn't, in the plans that you have laid out in front of you, that was not detailed completely, but those have been added to the plan to really highlight to the contractor how this is to be built and how that isolator row serves as the forebay.
Yeah, you do need that 44% TSS removal prior to infiltration.
And the other thing that's addressed is we added to this detail all the elevations so that the contractor can look right at the detail here and know exactly where the bottom of the chamber, where the top of the chamber, and everything else is.
Is there a specification for the fill material and the removal of any material underneath those infiltration units?
Yeah, I believe that's in the notes on the second page. It is quite coarse gravel there right now, and it would be a clean gravel fill that's put in below those culverts.
Back to the drainage. The double catch basin at that 90-degree bend. I've seen a lot of pretty short, intense storms do a lot of damage in recent years. So I'm wondering, I have some concern that area may have the potential to overspill at times. So it may be worthwhile considering doing some overflow protection there. Consider looking at a level spreader on the slope or something that might protect that area, particularly where you've also got a retaining wall at that receiving location.
Okay.
Is the wall going to be, the wall's going to need a building permit. Is that going to be something that's designed by your office, or will a structural engineer be handling that? Or?
You're talking about the wall in the back here?
Right.
I was not, it's 5 feet, I was thinking it was 4, which is building code.
Right.
Again, we're going back to what I thought I saw on the website of a 30-foot no disturb, and the reason why that wall is there is to try to stay out of that 30-foot. So we could reduce we could possibly eliminate that wall if we're allowed to grade a little bit further down into that area there.
Personally, I don't have an issue with that. My concern was not knowing the source of that water and how that's going to impact any structures there. That's really what I was getting at.
The source
of that wetland finger.
If there was a source, I think we would have seen it. I just think that the reason that wetland finger is there is simply the grading around it is all leading toward just this low swale.
Okay.
What we saw on the sidewalk, Brad, was that brook or stream in the back had flowing water in it. It was raining pretty heavy while we were there, but there was no standing water in that finger.
Yeah.
Nothing.
It was definitely a wetland, but there was no standing water or flowing water into that finger.
Okay.
So that's why we went with on site. We thought maybe it's originated from some sort of a drain at some point or something.
Then the only other question, concern I had was with the replication area. Just making sure that we do have, I don't see any proposed grading there.
On plan number 1.
Yeah,
this
right.
one
So,
shows the grade.
okay, so as long as we're showing something that's going to show how the hydrology is going to work.
Right, the grading is such that it's, again, for those that were on the sidewalk, right up in this area here, it's a gradual downhill, and I described how we're carving that back to a steeper slope right in the back here to bring the whole replication area down toward the elevation of the stream itself. So the grading should answer your question.
Okay. What's up?
Any other questions or comments?
Is there a planning schedule included in the plan?
I believe there is, yes. Got a number of plant species listed there, which were all found on the site. So would it please the board then if I address some of these issues, conduct the soil testing that DPW is asking for and show that on the plan? How do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, that's fine, because I'm sure you're gonna want an updated plan submitted and all that.
Yeah.
So,
Take a look at it once it's done.
okay. I'll open it to the audience if there's anybody who wants to speak. Anybody in the audience like to speak on this notice of intent? Second time and third and final time. Okay. Yeah, I think if you guys are all set, I think we heard our concerns, and if you want to address some of those, and we should be able to vote hopefully by the next meeting, and
Okay.
we'll kind of go from there. So, do you have a list of everything?
I have the
You have the
copy of the
DEP.
DEP letter now. I'll address those things. If it's okay with you, I'll remove how I highlighted the 30-foot no work zone.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll try to see if I can
Fine.
find where I can.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Because that's a surprise. And then I had written down Brad's comments about, of course I can't find them in my papers now. Brad had talked about specifying the fill, making sure that the fill specification is there for the Caltex, and then addressing some more stabilization in this zone here, especially cascading down the hill. You had mentioned a level spreader through there. Was there a third thing, Brad, or, no, I guess it was
The
the
wetland, right, you said you addressed that,
Yeah, that's all.
It made the topography out there made a lot of sense to put it there. It's kind of a,
right.
I think a good
As
spot.
we came further down here, it was really a sudden banking. And
I
hated
could
to
see
disturb
the
that
existing
banking.
contours doing that, right, yep.
Right through there, but then it became very gradual right in here. So it just made sense to.
Makes
put it
sense.
there.
Okay, yeah.
And Larry, what was your thoughts about leaving that or that little finger?
I'd rather see the finger. I mean, if you can remove even the wall and go back, I mean,
Wall, go back a
if
little
we can
bit.
compromise and,
That's
make it.
fine.
I don't see a price. The more wetland you can leave, in my opinion, the better.
Okay.
And I'm assuming removing the wall would actually save money, so that might be, we can kind of compromise on that one. And the only concern I would have is that maybe make sure there's some sort of barrier on this side. I know it's going to be limited. This area, just maybe a sign, some no snow storage signs. Just a lot of times people end up, saying, "Oh, I didn't realize I couldn't push snow here." So at least.
Did you say they're requiring some sort of a guardrail?
I'm sure building code has
Building
a
would have some sort
requirement,
of-
and for the sake of forklifts being out here, we can't just leave a 4-foot drop over the edge of the slab, so there will be some sort of guard through there, and that will come from the architect.
Okay. So I would put a little sign on the guardrail.
Yeah, right, yeah.
There's a fall protection requirement in the building code, so.
Yeah.
Sure, liability insurance companies want to see that anyway.
So does OSHA. Ever heard of that?
Just give them some cider, you'll be all set.
Yeah, right. No.
Right, yep, I think we're good, so we'll continue it. When's the next meeting is October 23rd. So, you can address all that, and no problem, we should be good. All right, thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next new hearing. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, will be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent by, I'm gonna kill this, Edward Frateschi for the clearing of 37,000 square feet of land and construction of new two-story buildings within the buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetland, address Central Street, map 500, lot 5.
Hi, for the record, Jim Basile, Hennigan Engineering. On behalf of our client, the Lot 5 Realty Trust, we come up with a site development plan for the construction of a commercial building along Central Street. This will take place on the westerly side of Central Street between, for reference, 1275 Central Street and 1269. If you travel down south Central Street, you'll hit Interstate 190, and then if you go up north Central Street, you'll get to center of Leominster. The site is approximately 1.24 acres in area, and the lot is currently vacant, no standing structures, and is primarily woodlands. There is a bordering vegetated wetland that runs along the northerly property line into the adjacent lot. This wetland area is subject to protection under the Wetland Protection Act and was reviewed by the Conservation Commission in January of 2017 for a sewer connection on the adjacent lot, which we will be utilizing for our project.
Just, can I interrupt you? Where on Central Street, what is the adjacent properties? I'm just trying to figure out where 1250 is.
So 1275 Central Street is,
The Jehovah's Witness.
yes,
Okay, sure.
that is the congregation of Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
The proposed commercial building is 9,600 square feet and is 2 stories. To provide access to the site, we are proposing an access drive off of Central Street. This will travel across the front of the building and down the southerly property line to the rear of the building. This will, along the access drive, will provide the required parking, and the parking in this lower area will provide access to the first floor, and parking over here, this upper level, will provide access to the second story. Due to the erosion control for the area will be straw wattles and silt fence barriers that will be placed along the limit of clearing. This will protect the resource area as well as demarcate the limit of construction. Due to the nature of this site and the amount of fill that will be required for the project, we're proposing a retaining wall to be placed to be installed along the limit of the parking area. Going along this side. This will also act as a permanent barrier to prevent any encroachment from the site into the resource area. As a safety feature and kind of a double feature, we're proposing a 4-foot chain link fence to be installed along the top of the retaining wall. This will also prevent any litter or waste that might be brought in with any cars onto the site and it'll prevent it from entering the resource area. Water connections for the building will be a fire suppression and a domestic line, which will connect to a water main within Central Street. Sewer for the building will be made to a sewer pump structure and force main that will connect to the existing sewage structure on the adjacent lot, which will then connect to the sewage line within Central Street. Drainage for the site will include several catch basins, the deep sump catch basins. And these will connect to drainage manhole structures and will then go to a water quality unit. In a combination of the deep sump catch basins and the water quality unit, they'll provide the 80% TSS removal required by stormwater management. From the water quality unit, it'll then travel to a main flow, which will evenly distribute the drainage to a underground storage detention system. This detention system will be used to mitigate the peak rates of stormwater. Then from the upon discharge, stormwater will be directed towards a level spreader, and this level spreader will mitigate the velocity prior to discharge to the resource area. Currently, there is an existing drainage culvert on Central Street that is capturing the stormwater off of Central Street. We're proposing an extension drainage to maintain drainage flow. This will, again, continue to will connect to a level spreader, and that will distribute to the resource area. This extension is taking place within a state easement. We're filing with the Mass DOT for an access permit for work within the site, and so we've began talking with them, and we're waiting to hear back with a access permit for work. If there are any questions by this commission, I can answer those.
Where is the resource area lying?
Okay, up in following this dash line, and runs down here and into the adjacent lot, right here, and then continues.
So it's pretty much at the line of disturbance, or pretty close to it.
The 25-foot buffer is where most of our work is taking place, so it's kind of show that for reference to the 25-foot buffer, and then our limit of clearing, and then the wetland area.
Questions, comments?
I think you answered one of my questions, and that was who owns that portion of Central Street? It's Mass DOT.
Yes.
Now, do they own that drainage easement that's shown on the plan?
Through the board. We have any contact with Mass DOT. They own this portion of the land, and it's actually a drainage easement that's owned by DOT.
Right.
But it's only to maintain a discharge point. So we've talked with them, and they've actually done a lot more comprehensive projects than this. So they are understanding that, as long as we can meet and or exceed the capacity that pipe currently is handling within Central Street, it is sufficient in their mind. So we will be filing an access permit with them and going through that whole rigmarole.
Okay. No second.
And how is that being cleaned? Do you have a stormwater unit? Like how are you cleaning the water before discharging it into the wetland? So you're bringing it right up basically to, like, it looks like within like 30 feet of the wetland?
From this area over here?
Yeah.
Again, to the board. It's an existing outfall right now, so it's our stance that it's already there. It's also handling a fair amount of water, so it's almost impossible to adequately design a treatment system for that. We are providing the level spreader for the velocity mitigation to try and limit as much as we can, but it's receiving a fair amount of water off of Central Street, so we're trying to maintain that as much as possible.
So the discharge point isn't changing at all?
The discharge point is moving. We're proposing a manhole structure as more like a conveyance feature, more or less, at the current culvert, and it'll just extend the pipe through to the level spreader area.
But it seems like you're taking the water that normally would just be able to just slowly dissipate out, and you're bringing it right to the wetland.
And installing this level spreader device is our intent to try to mitigate that as much as possible. This design uses a 10-foot level spreader as longest, if you will, so we feel that's very sufficient in order to accommodate these kinds of flows. The flows coming out of the underground storage system, we've found a new method of calculating these sizing of these outfall structures, if you will, and they're designed to handle over the 100-year storm event.
Well, it's also the sediment, though. I mean, you're taking the sediment, and instead of it dropping it by the street and let it slowly making the water making its way, you're taking water, sediment, and all, and discharging it into the wetland.
Yep.
I think that's making the situation worse, is what it seems like.
Bring it a lot closer to the resource area, for sure.
I mean, you get solid removal just by running over the land and making its way slowly to the wetland. Now, there's no chance for that.
detention system that you have, what's the capacity of that?
Again, through the board, or commission, it is designed to accommodate the 100-year storm event with plenty of freeboard within the actual system itself. So it should be more than sufficient to handle the anticipated flows from the site. But as for a cubic foot calculation, I don't have that off the top of my head right now.
I can send you all the drainage report. I thought I already had sent that out, but I can resend that out.
You may have.
And
Computer issues.
and we are going through planning board process. The DPW is supposed to have their comments back to me by, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, we're saying. So they're going through that whole process too, and DEP and everybody will take a look at the stormwater management.
I guess my only comment is, I'm just a little concerned, I think I mirrored Larry's comments of, I'm a little concerned that we're dumping stuff almost immediately into the resource area. I'm just wondering, is there a better way? Sitting here, on top of my head, I don't think of anything, but
We can probably look at seeing if we can do some kind of deep sump within the manhole structure to provide some form of sediment removal.
I'm not so concerned about the water. I think it's more the sediment that,
Yeah, and
You know what I
a
mean?
4-foot sump would function similar to a catch basin, if you will. That could be a potential revision we can take a look at.
I think I would agree with you that the level spreader is probably large enough to slow it down, but
Yeah, and granted, it's probably very little, but it would provide some kind of sediment drop out, at least the larger
Right.
sediments.
right. So, do you have a copy of this plan?
Yes,
Okay. Do you have it electronically?
I believe so.
Okay.
If not, I can call Chris tomorrow.
Yeah, I know you guys have been having issues with your servers and planning and
She's been having issues with her server. I haven't been.
But the planning department and I have been going back and forth because I keep sending them emails. They get a lot. They get them and they lose them. So I know that's kind of chaotic. So if you don't have it, let me know. I'll get you that.
Again, I'm not speaking for the board. I would like to really look at this a little closer myself. Do we have a site walk?
I sent out the doodle today.
Okay.
As soon as everyone responds, I do see that a lot of people have seen the email, just not responded to the doodle.
I saw both of those, but I figured
You responded?
Only Chris responded.
Okay.
I'd wait until we have a look at this tonight. Because I haven't seen this either.
I don't have a problem with the project other than just because a lot of the work's really close to the resource area, so I just want to examine it a little closer and take a look at the site walk.
If we have time, potentially we can probably get a crew out there to stake the wall as close as locations to the wetlands if the commission would like. Again,
Anything like that would help.
it's kind of tight this time of year. We're kind of in the chaos of construction where we have to get it finished. So I'll work with our survey department, see if we can get at least a crew up there for a few hours to stake the closest encroachments against that resource area.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful.
Because as I'm sure the commission's aware, it looks a lot worse on paper than it sometimes does in the field.
Yeah. I don't have any other questions. Anyone else? Okay. We'll make sure we get the site walk in.
Yeah, and we're still awaiting DEP comments, so.
Okay, perfect. So we'll continue it to our next meeting, which is on October. Oh, we did not. Anybody else in the audience like to speak on this notice of intent? Second time and third time. We'll leave the public hearing open and we'll continue it to our October 23rd meeting. And in the meantime, we'll have a site walk.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm very good today, so I'm ready to get it in person.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Any objection with me moving the agenda around a little bit? Okay. I want to step down to enforcement. 19 Willow Street. Where do we stand with 19 Willow?
I had issued out an enforcement. The commission has copies of it and needs to review it and then ratify it. I've also done a site walk out there. There is a running channel that goes behind the abutting properties and deposits into a catch basin at the end of 45 of it. And that catch basin then deposits to the wetlands on the other side of Stearns and Washington.
Okay. One of you two gentlemen, if not both, has been out there as well.
I've seen it over the years.
To see that channel area. You said
I saw it recently.
You saw it recently, okay.
I also have files for different abutting properties in regards to that channel and wetland with orders of conditions and enforcement orders with me as well.
Okay. Has everybody reviewed the enforcement order?
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's basically a wetland because it has an exiting stream or whatever. So at this point, I think we'd like to ratify, or at least have a vote to ratify that enforcement order. Any comments or questions from the commissioner?
A few comments. In the technical term aspect, it's a border and vegetated wetlands on 19 Willow Street, bordering on a stream.
Okay.
So it is jurisdictional. With respect to the enforcement order that was issued, it's a little outdated at this point. So if we're going to vote to issue an enforcement order this evening, I would suggest we update it with an updated timeline.
Okay.
And then ratify it this evening now that we have a quorum.
Okay. What were the dates on the enforcement order?
I think the work was supposed to be done prior to our last meeting or right about then.
Okay. I knew there was some timeline issues.
Right.
So I feel like for the past orders, we've done 45 days. What does the commission feel?
It's not a lot of material. If it were my choice, I'd say 30.
What is today's date?
The 9th.
9th. Yeah, potentially if you get into 45 days, it's starting to get frozen, so. I would say, I would think 30 days would be good. Is that something you guys
No.
could,
Can I speak, please?
you can?
All right. My name is Eddie Coffin, 19 Willow Street. Bought the house 2 years ago. I moved into that property with the disposed stuff that you guys have seen. I've only added grass clippings to that. It doesn't have a stream weaving. It just pools and dries up. I've walked around. I've talked to my neighbors. It actually floods out one of my neighbor's backyard, but then dries up. I guess 5 to 7 years ago, the gentleman who owned my house actually buried a structure that was in my yard. That is now my problem, I guess.
Causing it to be.
People, my neighbors tried fighting it in the city of Leominster, and the Conservation Department and the city of Leominster said there was nothing they could do. Oh, bad, too sad. And that is what has started causing more of a flooding situation in the back. You said you're from Leominster, you're from the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. There was a barn back there, he knocked it down, which made it even more wet. And the neighbors behind me said it was never this wet until he knocked that down. So when I first moved in, I've only continued dumping grass clippings along with the rest of my neighbors. So the little bit of grass clippings that are in my yard, I've just continued. That was all there. The pictures of the tires that you guys have no idea where the tires have come from. Another question. Are you guys supposed to let me know when you come to my yard? Do a sidewalk on my property?
As far as I'm aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, we only did that one site walk.
Yeah, and I've had permission from Ann wasn't on your property.
Someone was on my property because all the vegetation's leaned over and someone cut some vegetation down. Again, wasn't me. I've taken pictures before and after, so someone else has been on my property. And I also asked for a no contact order. I'd rather deal with one of you five and not Angela, if that was okay, because we are neighbors. It's a conflict of interest. So I have a bunch of concerns. I would love to talk even more because I wasn't available to make it on September 11th, which I was told would be continued if I wasn't there. I never knew that you guys were going to start an enforcement order if I wasn't here. It was my son's birthday. Not that it matters, but I would have loved to have talked to you guys and explained my situation instead of stuff being explained to me in person and over the phone, and then a day later placing blame on me or starting a kind of a witch hunt on my property, which I checked out before I bought my property. Went to the proper channels asking Marco, Mr. Martian, like a bunch of people about my property because it was wet. It had the cat and eye tails. I thought it was wetlands. And I was informed that it wasn't. It was man-made. And so forth. Like my neighbors grew up, all my neighbors, the elderly people grew up in my neighborhood. It was never a wetland. So again, I don't want to ruin Leominster. I moved here, moved my young family here to let them grow up. I don't want to ruin the city. I don't want to ruin my yard. But, I mean, come on. I mean, this was never my intent to break any laws or to start anything.
Everybody around us, every single person that abuts onto that property dumps stuff. Our neighbor's son, when he cuts his lawn, dumps it back there. The people up above the hill who I've never even met dump it through the grass in the hill. The people, we just spoke with them yesterday, as a matter of fact, because they were dumping branches and twigs, and none of it, from what we have seen, has been garbage. Again, I understand that it violates the Wetlands Act, but we had to go over, and we actually told her, we're like, hey, listen, this is what we're dealing with right now. Like, we own this property, you can't be doing this. And she said, you don't own this property. And we said, yes, we do. And they didn't even know. They thought it was city-owned, that it was just
They were told
like
the city
dead
owned
space, basically, if you will.
when they tried
Right.
fighting it when he knocked the barn down.
So she apologized, and she said, oh, it's just twigs. And I explained to her what we were going through and the violations and this and that. And she said, we've dumped here since 36 years that she's lived there. They've been dumping things there in the hopes that it would help rectify the water seeping into their lawns and then flooding their basements and their backyards. But it seems a little unfair, if you will, that we are now responsible for cleaning this whole mess up that we have not created.
And I've only been there 2
add
years.
tiny, tiny portion of it to not even 2 years, because we didn't even do anything with it until maybe a year ago when we actually, started getting the fence together, and we didn't even go in the backyard because the kids couldn't play back there. So that it wasn't even a full 2 years that we've been doing this. And we've never, ever, ever would we ever dump trash anywhere, let alone our backyard. Never mind if it's a wetland that's unsightly. So, again, here we are, we're left with all of this damage control for all of these past owners and all of the current owners who are still dumping because
And it's just
nobody
funny how
seems
it's
to be
my
aware of it.
property that is being singled out. And I wasn't going to bring up any of my neighbors. But it's just really funny because of what happened on the night that Angela showed up at my house after hours.
We don't want to get anybody in trouble, our neighbors.
Listen, you know what, I just, the whole thing was handled poorly. There was a different way to handle it. I don't agree with the way it was handled, and since that night, it has escalated into, quite frankly, almost a harassment situation.
I have a question also, because I have information from you, Angela, stating that yes, it was considered a wetland, but that it didn't have a direct water source to or from anywhere in the city, and that there were no endangered species. Which is why, as a matter of fact, that same night that this all started, you in fact told me yourself that you didn't even plan on pursuing it because of that, because it wasn't directed to anything in the city and there were no endangered species or wildlife or anything of that sort. So I'm curious where this stream is now coming in.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I recently viewed the property. We met together on your lot one day, saw the vegetated wetland area. I walked the abutters, I saw the hydrologic connection. Under the regs, you have what's called a bordering vegetated wetland bordering on a stream. Whether there's documentation or other records of that is really immaterial. It physically exists.
Doesn't matter who's made it, when it was made, what caused it. It now exists, and it's your property. Whether your neighbors are dumping on it, we look at what we're told to look at. So I didn't walk around on your neighbors, and
This is video, right?
that is correct.
Awesome.
So, our job as stewards of the city of Leominster, environmental stewards of the city of Leominster, I will tell you that I've walked to people's houses and said, you might not want to do that. As a conservation agent, if I saw somebody, I'll give you a perfect example, somebody that I know called me and said, my neighbor's doing this into a wetland. So I went over, knocked on their door and said, you might not want to do this because it might cost you money to fix it.
That's how you handled it?
That's,
I would have really appreciated that night for you to come and have that conversation with me.
so it's a matter of anybody can tell you that you might not want to do that into a wetland.
I'm in law enforcement.
As a protection of yourself.
Totally understandable.
Historically, I don't know that area. I am from Leominster, 47 years. Didn't live in that neighborhood, but doesn't matter what made it, who made it, when it was made. But today, as it sits, is a bordering vegetated wetland. Mr. Marchand was at our last meeting. City Council has nothing to do with wetlands. They have no jurisdiction unless we bring it to their reasoning. But at this point, the board that sits in front of you is the keepers and the stewards of environment in the city of Leominster.
Okay.
So what we saw when we were on a site walk, and all I looked at that evening was your yard. I did not look, what I could see, I didn't go on the property. I saw filling of wetland. I will tell you that because you have a bordering vegetated wetland, there's also a 100-foot buffer zone. And your entire property up to including your front porch is about, I didn't measure it, is in a bordering vegetated wetland now.
Yes.
So as it sits, my recommendation would be to remove that stuff we saw, not your neighbors, because we can have that discussion, but that small area right behind your house, because that's what we were looking at and witnessed. And
Which is all we've done anyway, so.
that is the enforcement order that this board is currently looking at.
Well, I could start removing what I removed, but then you guys could come back and say it wasn't enough. And how do we know exactly how many grass clippings I put there? There was already grass clippings I dumped on top of when I moved in the house.
Right.
So where do I stop and where do I start?
If I may. Yeah. Four of us were there. There's more than just grass clippings there. There's other material, there's other fill. It's not just lawn refuse that's been there over the years.
That's all I did was lawn. That's all I've done.
And that's an active pile. That's not something that looks like it's been there decades old.
That's all I've done in not even a year and a half.
Okay. And you've been there about 2 years?
About 2 years, and we were using the dump sticker that my brother had.
And you did mention that you're aware that neighbors are dumping on there too, right?
We've seen it. Like I said, just last night, we saw it. No, Sunday night. I'm keeping it to days Monday.
So what are you guys proposing that I have to do? To remove that pile? How much of that pile? And how do I, I'm gonna actually appeal this, so.
We, as the board, would like you to remove down to the level of the wetland, meaning that wetland, from what I remember, was relatively flat. So basically from your existing where you walked to the bottom of the wetland, so a couple feet. And because, and again, this is my opinion at this point, I would suggest not even to mow behind your fence. I would say,
It's gonna ruin my fence.
because that's a now bordering vegetated wetland buffer
It's gonna,
zone.
and again, I actually went through, the law states I can have that fence.
You,
The law does state I can have that fence, and I
Yep.
can maintain both sides of my fence. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may. If the line's in an upland area, there's nothing that prevents the owners from mowing that.
okay,
So if there's a little bit of lawn beyond the fence, which I agree there's an upland area there, you can mow that. And what we're really talking about is the break at the top of the slope down to that wetland area where there's the active fill.
Yep.
But the grass that's up high and around that fence, in my opinion, that's something you can mow. That's allowed under regs.
right.
all right, I'm gonna get the proper paperwork and I'll do what I have to do, so.
So what's the date? And what happens, so does you guys come back out to check it by that date, or?
Sure. So we're going to discuss as a commission here, and you're welcome to stay for the duration of this, whether we're going to take enforcement action based on what we saw on your property. Should the commission issue an enforcement order, the process for appealing that is to appeal that to Superior Court. So that doesn't go to DEP, that actually goes to Superior Court, so you have to file with them.
I think we already have the paperwork.
Okay.
So how long do we want the date? 30 days from tonight? 45 days?
It would be the date, probably the date of issuance.
Or whenever it was?
Yeah.
Well, the issuance was a couple weeks ago.
So
The original
Or-
date was the 29th of October. And the original, and I believe it was.
September. Yes, no, August, because we were
But
out
by,
there.
by the 29th, I believe of this month, it was.
by the
supposed to be done.
25th, the 25th of September.
That was the original. So it was issued when? It was issued in August. The original,
It was like the last week. of
Yes, it's the
August.
last week of August. The post office called me a couple times. There's a couple issues getting it there.
okay.
Because I work.
They just started school.
I'm just thinking, the 30 days, I was thinking from the date that we ratify it, or, that it's reissued.
Should be ratified this evening if we issue it.
Then that's technically, then it would be from, yeah.
So it'd be 30 days from the time we basically ratified.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion, or do I have a motion?
Who will be supervising the fill if they don't want me on the property?
If you're not allowed on the property, I mean, it's really the commission's jurisdiction anyway. Yep, so, I think what we do is if we go to issue the enforcement order, we wait for the process to go forward before we get to that point.
Comments or questions? Or do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to ratify the enforcement order.
With 30 days from
With
the
30 days
date
from the date of
ratification.
ratification.
Do I have a second on that?
Discussion, that sounds
So, do you have a
I
discussion?
think you need to have more discussion on that.
Sure.
You need to be clear specifically what we're requiring, and then to,
Okay.
again, to update it, given any timeline.
Okay.
Okay. So the enforcement is to remove material adjacent to your fence behind your property, down to the level of the wetland elevation.
It's to remove the active fill pile from within the bordering vegetated wetland area.
There you go.
Yeah.
And 30 days from date of ratification.
Just today, if they should.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to ratify the enforcement order with the condition that the active fill pile be removed within 30 days of the order being ratified.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. You have 30 days to remove, or you can appeal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Old Tavern Road, where's that sit?
they were supposed to be here tonight.
Okay.
Basically, I was on an erosion control inspection due to the rainstorms, and I noticed in the road the breach in the erosion controls down in the valley. I walked down there, I talked to the gentleman who were working on site and made sure it was okay for me to be there and just take a look at the silt. As you can see from the pictures, there's quite a substantial amount of silt that got through the erosion control barriers, as well as, that was in the last meeting. The order has also expired and lapsed. Which I did speak to the homeowner. He is aware of it. He is contacting his engineer to go through filing for another notice of intent to complete the driveway, as well as there will be some changes made to the way the driveway is.
Okay. So where does it sit? Do we have an enforcement?
We have an enforcement order that the commission needs to ratify, or not ratify.
Do you have an enforcement order? Can I see it? Do you have the plan that you had for that property? I know you had it last meeting too.
I must have left it in my office.
Okay. You said they've been in contact with the consultant to handle this for them, or
Yes.
has that consultant been in touch with you?
Not yet. The last time I spoke to them was on Thursday of last week. We discussed it. They'd come to the meeting this week. He wanted to change the way that the driveway, instead of having a curve, it goes straight. So they're working with their engineering team to reapply for the notice of intent with that, as well as remove the fill.
Okay. I walked the abutting property. There is quite a bit of silt in the wetland there, which is actually off-site. The silt's getting on the neighbor's yard. And I did have some concerns with the construction and the exposure towards the rear as well. So I wanted to take a look and see what we had approved, and even if they're complying with that.
I can run my office and grab the folder.
Okay, if you got a minute, thank you.
So you were on the neighbor's property for this? Okay.
But the actual resource impact, I think, is on the neighbor's property, not.
It's not on this property, but
Right.
actually on the neighbors that you were at.
Yeah.
Is where it is? Okay. And this is in a wetland?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, there's actually blue flags still up there in some areas too.
Okay.
The silt fence has just been knocked down. I think it's in the pictures.
Yeah, I mean, this picture is showing down.
Yeah, I might have. I got shot up there. So there's the project driveway there, that's downstream,
Yeah.
you can see everything's come down
Okay.
right onto it.
And where's the property line? Is it the silt fence?
There was a stake out here, I mean, I didn't go anywhere near the property line,
Yep.
but there's an orange stake
Okay.
there, I wonder if that might be it.
So it's
And then you can
definitely
even
on
see
the
that
property.
these. Oh,
It's on
the
the adjacent
impact is
lot.
off-site, yeah, the impact
Yeah.
is on the adjacent property.
Okay.
There might be some on the site locus, but, so, I mean, it's gonna involve quite a bit of handwork to get all that material out of
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
But the important thing is they need to get on and stop it. I mean, you can see on the other side, it looks like there's impacts
Yeah.
possibly on their side as well, but
They haven't done any work to remove anything at this point?
Not this time.
And when was the last time you were on site when you took these pictures? Or?
Yeah, when I took the pictures.
Okay. So why hasn't it gotten any better? Because those pictures look pretty similar to the pictures Brad just had, so.
it's not gonna get any better in this weather.
I mean, enforcement's okay, but I think we need to just reach out and just see if they can start getting some hay bales and silt fence up, like, right away?
I did advise him to
Okay.
put some, to fix the erosion controls to prevent anything else from getting out there. And he said, as long as, I'm like, I'll be fine to do that, you can have your contractor go out and do that.
Do you know when they received the enforcement order? Like when they were first actually aware of it?
It's in that
Mhm.
folder there, sorry.
No date of delivery. When did you first have discussions with them, I guess?
On Thursday.
Thursday with us. Okay. Yeah, if you can stress to them that that needs to be done immediately. And they really need to have their consultants out there advising them on what to do and where.
I'd like to see.
And we're only seeing what's near the property line. There's other resource areas all through that site, so. I'm curious if they've done the replication as well. I mean, they've done the filling. The driveway's there, so. And just to get an assessment of what they've done that's in accordance or deviates from this plan. You know, looking at the backyard doesn't look like what was proposed. I don't think they've really done any of that cutting. They've done some removal of material behind the house, but I don't think really this cut is in place. Really, if they plan on doing that, and I have some concerns with this anyway. They're proposing a 2-to-1 without any real good stabilization there, which is not a good idea. But I don't think they've graded it that way yet. So I guess immediate term, get their consultant out there to advise them on what BMPs to install, remediate the wetland resource impacts, and then to refile, and if they're gonna revise this plan, give us the new plan at the same time with that application. And same issue we have with the previous enforcement order. This one's kind of outdated now, so we need to think about some new dates for that. It's tough when we don't have a quorum when we're meeting.
Thanks, Larry. Sorry. He didn't even bring a spot over to make it up for it. I definitely would agree with Larry and with Brad. So let's update the enforcement order to basically include what Brad had said. So fixed BMPs, silt fence, hay bales, but it sounds like you kind of already told them that. Start remediation and get a consultant to refile.
Is this the property that has an expired order of conditions?
Yes.
And do we want to assign a date as well, or at least a timeline?
As far as the installation of BMPs and their consultant, that should be immediate, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they do have the prior enforcement order for that.
Okay.
And then in terms of filing the notice of intent, do you have a calendar with our deadlines by any chance, Angela, or?
I do not on my phone.
What normally?
What's it like? How many days
It's 2
before
days
the meeting?
after last meeting, so the deadline for this week is the 11th for the next meeting. So it's,
So if we meet the 23rd again, the filing deadline for the following meeting would be the 25th.
yep.
I would go no later than that, simply because they're active on no permits.
Right.
But I mean, you gotta give them a little bit of time, but that gives them now at least a total of 3 weeks to
Right.
get on it.
I would agree with that.
Oh, as far as the fill being taken out, is that like a springtime thing? Is that something you do with right away?
I would do that.
I would do that now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's handwork.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna get machines that's gonna destroy
Right.
it, so. You wanna do it before spring, not before, too late, once it freezes, it's.
Right, well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, at some point, it's gonna start freezing. and,
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
they
a
know what they need.
substantial amount, but it's doable.
Yeah.
It's doable, so I would say immediately, yeah.
That's a lot of handwork, looking at these photos.
Yeah, but it's not my back. I mean, that's the only way to get that out, though. I mean, what else?
Yes.
You're not gonna get a backhoe in there and destroy that wetland.
Right.
It's a lot of shoveling and buckets and wheelbarrows and stuff, but, so it needs to be done immediately. All right. Do I have a motion for the enforcement order and/or timeline for filing? I don't know how you want to write that one.
I'll try, I guess, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion, we issue an enforcement order for 138 Old Tavern Road, which is formerly DEP file number 199-876, requiring to immediately install BMPs per their engineer or erosion control specialist's advice, as well as file a new notice of intent for the outstanding work that's required within our jurisdiction, buffer zones or resource areas, with that application to be received no later than October 25th, and also for a restoration plan for the wetlands impacts to be submitted to us by October 25th as well.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Thank you. Did you get all that, Angela?
I think so.
That's a long one.
That's a long one. Okay, perfect. Willard Street, I saw an email that says nothing new, 723 Willard.
Yes, nothing new at this time.
Okay. I would only suggest you speak with Mr. Hannigan, and, I mean, it is October, and yes, people are busy, but what he's proposing is definitely doable before the winter time. And I know he mentioned about doing a lot of construction when the ground freezes. I guess I don't have a problem with that, but, you know, I'd like to, you know, get shed moved or whatever, you know.
What was the original timeline to have that moved? Once the owner agreed to it, did he set end of October?
I don't remember.
He set a date.
I honestly can't remember, Paul. I know when they were here, we said to remove it. They came back and said they would remove it. And there was kind of that outline of how they were going to remove it. And then 2 meetings ago, they mentioned doing the majority of the work after the ground hardens and or freezes in November, December. But I don't think in our letter or our discussion we actually issued them a date other than immediately.
But I'm sorry, go ahead, Paul.
We did have dates on the enforcement order though, didn't we? We had 45-day time.
Yeah, but I think
That's true.
That's yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. The original was long past, so,
Yeah,
you know.
okay.
You know, I mean, they've talked about, you know, prepping for a shed. That can be happening now, you know. If they're gonna use a crane to pick up a shed and move it, that's a few-hour task.
Yeah, it's not.
That's
yeah,
a very quick,
And I think
easy.
we heard that they couldn't get a crane, but I've been on a number of jobs where we've gotten fairly quick access to cranes, so I'm lost there.
Correct, so that's why I would like this buttoned up by the time the snow flies, so just by email and or by conversation with Mr. Hannigan, just kind of say, no update at this time is not kind of go over too well, continuing, so. Thank you.
Let's get this thing going.
Paul's favorite, 96 Exchange Street, on hold until wetlands are delineated. Where do we sit?
So since the agenda was posted, the wetlands have been delineated, and then they sent the crew out there to adjust the erosion controls and replace them because they were not adequate. Unfortunately, they only put a straw wattle down. They did not put the silt fencing down, so I was in contact with Kent Oldfield today to have that fixed, and he's going to have them get out there as soon as possible.
Is that what was on the plan, wattles and silt fence, or was it hay bales and silt fence?
I want to say it was hay bales and silt fence, but at one of my first meetings, it was discussed that the commission had wanted straw wattles.
The original barrier was hay bales that had broken down.
Okay. And we talked about that at one of our meetings.
I believe so.
Doesn't ring a bell.
I can't recall all the meetings for that property, so.
I swear there's a specific reason that they put a straw wattle out there.
I'm usually not a fan of them, that's why I asked. Especially when you go
I want to say the order.
when you're going into winter, because the snow gets on them and there's about this much reveal come springtime, and then everything in the spring just goes right over them.
Go back and double check that.
At one point, we were asking for them because, there was, I guess there's invasives and stuff that were, there were some towns that were saying that there was invasives being found in the hay that, so they decided spreading the seeds around,
Well, there's other BNPs out there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's compost socks, and those tend to be thicker and more rugged too, if that's the case.
So I'm assuming you're gonna go and check once you are notified of it all?
Yeah, I'll go back out and check as soon as I get notified.
Okay, as long as you are extremely happy with the erosion control, I think this commission will be happy.
Yeah, as long as it's what's on the plan, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they just really need to fix the silt fencing along with it and take out the degrading hay bales.
okay. Lock Drive, 199-1036. What is this about?
So I was made aware that there was some issues around this property when I got to the site. Just kind of look around, I noticed there was no DEP sign. There are erosion controls. They are degrading. But I noticed there have been quite a bit of work that have been happening on the site. They're also trying to get their sewer line approved by the inspectors as well. I was also informed that they didn't get approval through Marco Bengrazi to start the work either, and the order has not been recorded. So I've been in contact with Mr. Zares and Mr. Oldfield, who is the engineer, even though the plans were stamped by Mr. Grenier. And they are working on tracking down, because they say they did record it. I don't have any record. I wasn't able to find down the registry of deeds, so they're working on getting that taken care of and having the page and book number provided to me, as well as putting a DEP sign up and meeting and adjusting all the erosion controls. But they're not doing any work until all that's been completed.
Is this the car lot, is this the car lot site, or is this the one?
This is the marijuana facility off
Is it-
of Mohawk, which is off of Nashua.
So it's the one all the way down on the last one on the right-hand side? Because there was two, there was one that we had a solid waste issue with, and then there was one next to it that was a proposed car dealership. It was that before your time, do you remember that?
it might have been.
Yeah, it was like a transite pipe or something with being buried.
I don't remember that.
So that must be, that's like the one, the last one on the right.
The order.
You have the plan set in there?
So this,
There was a concern with, it was brought to my attention that they're taking fill from the site over at 96 Exchange Street and depositing it at this site. It was brought to my attention. So I did ask Mr. Oldfield about that, and he provided me with a new plan that actually shows the compensatory storage as well as what's been done. So I can see if it matches up to the floodplain elevations.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
yes,
Any correspondence going out to consultant should, if Mr. Oldfield wants to be in the loop, I think we should still be communicating with him. But the engineering record is actually down right here. So anything that we send to Mr. Oldfield, we should be at least CCing the engineer.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
yes.
These gasoline and diesel 5-gallon cans, were those empty?
They were empty.
Was there any sign of spillage?
I didn't see any on the inspector. The city inspector also took a look around. He didn't see any either. It's just not very well kept.
The order clearly states that fuels have to be kept in a certain storage area, not just thrown around. This is quite astounding when you look at it.
So the order has not been registered.
Not that I can see. They're working on providing me with the book and page number.
Okay. Obviously, there's some pictures showing some major issues. So cease and desist verbally at this point.
Yes.
Well, I think we should have some discussion on what type of enforcement we want to take.
Yeah, I'm just asking her.
I'm always leery about just verbal.
No, I just asked what's been done so far, basically. So it's just a verbal cease and desist until,
Yes.
okay. So no enforcement has been issued official?
Non-official.
This has just been unofficial discussion back and forth with?
Yes, I did ask DEP the recommendation on it, after kind of seeing what was going on there, and they said, the verbal would be the best way to start, and then if things don't progress, then go to the paper, and then they can get involved if it continues.
Okay.
It's been a while though since they've known it hasn't been recorded, right?
Yes, I did tell them that. They said where it's an issue of recording and not damage to the resource area, they were more inclined to let the local commission.
There is resource area damage, so it's floodplain. So yeah, maybe they thought it was just buffer zone.
What's the date of the verbal cease and desist?
Can't remember off the top of my head. I have to go back and look at my mileage
A
log.
week ago or 2 weeks?
2 weeks ago, it was before the last meeting, so it was on the last meeting.
And have you been there since?
I have not. I was planning on getting out there this week to take a look.
I'm just curious.
I was looking for a plan really because the issues with the foundation, the building commissioner also did confirm with me that the foundation levels were changed, and I measured it, it's more than 4 feet high, but I couldn't find anything stating what the original height was, so I did discuss that with Mr. Oldfield as well. I would like to see what the change was, why it was made, and how it affects the floodplain.
Okay.
Is Mr. Oldfield the engineer now for?
He is not the engineer.
Okay.
John Grenier is the engineer of our file, yes. Mr. Oldfield is just a representative for
Okay.
Mr. Xeris. Correct. Okay.
So the building elevations are shown on the plans that were submitted to us. These are our record plans.
I believe those are the ones I made copies of in the
Yeah.
building department.
And they have a different set. Oh, these are the building department ones. Okay.
There's most definitely some gaps between the two files, so I was taking a look around them all and trying to find. I had one of the building inspectors help me go over the levels, but on the foundation plan, it has it starting at an elevation of 100 instead of, I think it's 298 was supposed to be at. So his advice was to contact Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, so those slab elevations are what was on the set you had actually emailed. So I have one of those sheets there. Yep. So those elevations were on the approved plan set. And you're saying you think he's 4 feet higher now?
Yes. Yes, and the building commissioner confirmed that they did have to raise the elevation of it after the plans were submitted.
Is the building in the floodplain? Is that in portion of?
Yeah, and
It is.
And it went up 4 feet?
what it looks like. It's a very high
Foundation.
foundation, yeah.
Is that it right there in the picture?
Yep. And it's buried too.
And it's supposed to be that one, right?
And that's what the building inspector had explained to us, was very ground level.
Guess they missed.
But they had, the reason they had wanted to raise the elevation was because it's just a metal building and they were concerned due to what's going to be in the facility about theft, and they wanted to raise it a little higher to make it a little more difficult.
And they didn't come back?
Not that I can see. I didn't see that they came back and brought it to our attention.
I mean, 4 feet's pretty substantial to be filling in the floodplain. To just decide that it would be safer to what's inside the building, like that.
I don't understand what 4 feet has to do with safety. It's nothing more than a step ladder to gain access.
I'm assuming it'll be a little, I'm assuming it'll be a little bit difficult to carry down.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Wow, can I see that one?
Yeah. People rob banks, you know, I mean.
Yeah,
somebody wants to
banks
get
pretty
Looks like
something-
secure.
no one's gonna be robbing anything.
So the warehouse is built. That's that building that's shown?
Yes,
In
and
this
then there's gonna be a
picture?
secondary one, which is actually now gonna be attached to the first one from my conversations with Mr.
This is the
Oldfield.
one that's built?
This one's built here and this one's going to be built.
Which one, which is the one that's built? This is the existing,
The small building?
yeah.
Oh,
Just
okay, I
part
was
of-
thinking
they're
that,
both-
okay,
they're
I
both
was looking
part
at
of the,
that giant one.
That's the
thinking
small one,
was-
which is the,
That's a little better at least,
it's on,
because they can make up the floodplain.
they subdivided the lot after they got the approval. So that one's on one lot and the next building, which they have, both were on the plans, is gonna be on the next lot, but now they're gonna be connecting the buildings, from what my understanding is.
Can you subdivide an order of conditions?
No,
Yeah, so I mean,
it's an easy answer.
Oh, boy.
Well, there's less than a foot difference of the proposed slab of the larger building to the proposed slab of the existing building. That's 4 feet higher, right?
Yes.
That means that warehouse is
It
gonna be
looks
4
like
feet
one.
higher?
They haven't put it in yet. I'm still waiting for the plans from Mr. Oldfield or Mr. Grenier.
Oh, boy. I say drop back 10 and punt on this project. I mean, can you subdivide a lot that has an order and
Because the address that we have for it, 1798, isn't actually the address that the building department has for it. They have two separate addresses on GIS now.
Well, there's no order recorded, so we didn't always have the order.
okay, see that? Say it again.
I would assume if you subdivided it, that would be picked up in the title search, that there's an open border of no
Oh, why is
certificate.
it? Okay. Just wondering how it's
That's why it's
different.
not recorded.
All Angela does do is just sitting there thinking, this is a headache.
It's a little confusing.
Yeah, when you start talking about subdividing a order of conditions.
Now, was that second building proposed, that warehouse, that gigantic?
So when the order of conditions, from my understanding, the order of conditions was brought to the attention of the commission, there was no buildings there. This building was built without Marco being alerted. There was an article in the paper about it as well. They just kind of went ahead and put the building in and did not file the foundation permits. That was all done after the fact.
They, all right, now, so they did the building work before or after the order of conditions?
So the order of conditions was issued.
Yeah.
The building, they didn't have approval. They, Marco didn't go out there. They didn't have the DEP sign up. Marco didn't go out there and approve the erosion controls. They just put the building in. It wasn't, he was unaware of it.
The building inspector issued the permit for the building though.
After the foundation was put in, then the building permit was, yeah.
Does he not require a building permit for the foundation?
It is required.
Okay.
It was done without his knowledge, so they kind of had to back permit it, I guess.
After the fact.
Yeah, after the fact, thank you. I was like,
Wow.
But you don't have to approve it, just if it doesn't meet, if it's in a floodplain and it's 4 feet higher, I mean, just because it's already done doesn't mean you have to sign off on it.
That's correct.
Can you explain to me where that structure is in relation to the site plan here?
the structure here.
Right here. So what is, I mean, this looks like drainage or
That
sewer.
looks sewer.
Yep, so that's where
So
now?
this is, right here,
So this
this-
building is this building?
yes.
Okay.
And that was, at the time, it was not there when this was proposed.
And this is the drain or the sewer?
This is the sewer, I believe. This is, because this, this is the sewer. This is what
So this
Sean was
is,
inspecting.
this is between the building and the street?
There's there's a little parking area, like a cul-de-sac in the street. I'm standing at a,
Standing on the street? Oh, I see.
I'm kind of standing to the side looking at the building
I didn't-
and the long.
I didn't see the bituminous, okay.
I was like, I'm trying to see, I'm standing right over
That other
here.
It's that building's not there.
This building's not here yet. From my conversations, they are now trying to attach it. But I told them that we need new plans.
Looks bigger than that, right?
Yeah, this one can't be that one.
It's almost like you
It's
drive
all
inside the
80.
wall.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
So this one's in, this one's not.
Yes.
And they want to attach this to this?
That, from my conversations, that's the idea now.
So this is the one that's 4 feet higher.
Yes,
People
the,
have to.
And
the foundation,
The existing one.
yes, is it.
and there is a BFD.
So at minimum, they need to come in front of us for an amended order of conditions, or a minor change, or, right?
Or a new filing.
Or, right, that's what I'm saying,
I don't think it's minor.
no, I'm just saying, but they have to come, they can't just work under the order of conditions, because if they're moving buildings in a floodplain, that
And subdividing
either has to
lots,
be,
yeah.
Well, if the order is not recorded from
It's
the...
not even valid at this point.
well, that's what I'm saying, so,
Right, they shouldn't be doing any work.
so they should start from scratch, would be my recommendation.
How old is that order?
It was dated the 17, where was I, just saw it.
What do you guys have?
Who has the order? Says it on that signature page, which you did not sign.
I did not sign.
You were on the commission, but your signature is not present, so you either weren't present or voted against.
Hold on.
Probably
I got it.
voted against.
February 17th, 2017.
I was definitely on the commission.
Yeah, well, your name's on there.
I don't know how you voted, but you didn't sign it.
Right. So it's a year and a half, almost 2 years old, It has not been recorded. So you start from scratch.
See, where for exchange rate being recorded?
Yes.
And especially if the changes that are proposed are in that floodplain, which it obviously looks like.
Is that my copy? Can someone-
What is that? Is that gremlins or something? Yeah, I don't even know how to handle this one at this point.
I would suggest we give them a cease and desist. It's clearly not built in accordance with the plan. The order is not even recorded.
Right.
You look at, you go through each condition in the order of conditions. The ones that they haven't met, you cite on the enforcement order as the condition number. You start with that condition number 8. Prior to any work, this order must be recorded. The order's not recorded.
Right.
They're in violation there. It doesn't comply with the existing plan set. There's a number of conditions that you would check for that. And we know it's 4 feet higher how from the building plans or from an as-built or?
So when me, myself and the inspector were looking at it, he said that they had it listed as 100 for the elevation, which doesn't make sense because the elevation was 298, and we were trying to figure out, and I measured it as 4 feet, but I received multiple notices that they had raised it, as well as talking to the building commissioner. He's like, oh yeah, they raised it up because of the concerns that it wasn't brought before Marco. Marco had no idea about that one.
But does it matter if if you have a building and it sits in a floodplain, does it matter if the foundation's 4 feet higher?
I mean, is it raised, the whole
Yes,
thing, or?
because not necessarily the building itself, but when you look at photos, you see that grading goes out and beyond. So it's usually the fill placed around the foundation that becomes the issue.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, does it matter that if the foundation's 4 feet higher, that shouldn't matter. But if the grading's 4 feet higher, yes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I personally don't care if the foundation goes up 4 feet and then the metal building, or if the metal building, it's still holding flood storage, but if,
Right, but you don't have this foundation going up and up and up that's exposed and doesn't have frost protection. So there's always the code requirement that you bring the fill to it.
yeah.
So you usually, anytime you increase the foundation height, you're increasing the fill around it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
But I mean, the bottom level of the foundation, that hasn't changed, right? Then it's just the sidewalls is what
It's really the grading you have to worry
Yeah.
about, not so much the actual foundation, or it's just how much, if the elevation of the grading should be at 100. As long as it's 100, I don't care
It
what.
doesn't appear as though it's the entire building either.
No.
From this photograph, it looks like this other sidewall is down at
Yeah.
grade.
Yeah, that's what I was
Doesn't
noticing.
it?
Yeah.
I was thinking it was the floor of the facility.
Well, no, that's why when I looked at the pictures, that's what I'm saying. It's all about the grading. It's not the building that we have, because do we care if it's a concrete wall or a metal? It's still flood storage that
Yeah.
the building's taking up. But I see Brad's point. It's all about the elevation.
Does that look like?
But it depends on the floor elevation too, because
Right.
You've
That's
you got
right.
impervious and
We need to find out what
Yeah.
that floor elevation is. So, right.
And it doesn't appear solid all the way around either.
Yeah.
Like there's,
sounds like we just need an as-built to get a better
We
idea
need to
compared to what.
Hunt and come back and start from scratch again.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen.
But I
We
mean,
don't
compare it
even
to
know.
what was there, because we have to
Right.
figure out the floodplain. There's a net change in floodplain elevation.
Right.
How long has that foundation been in place?
Since 2017.
And have they submitted the foundation as-built to show the inspector that they comply with zoning?
Yes. As far as I know, that was done after.
Because these two plans show proposed. So we should get that as-built for the foundation location, see where exactly it is and if it complies with our plans.
So do we want to file an enforcement order with
Yes.
all the conditions that have not been met? And a cease and desist with all these issues need to be addressed with.
I think we should.
How long is the enforcement order usually? How many pages?
I only got 5 lines, actually.
See attached.
See attached. Yeah,
So what do you think this was?
This-
Because you're looking at one of the sides, right?
you're looking at, yeah, we're looking at one of, we're looking this way.
Back here.
It's, yeah, because see the doorway right there? I'm assuming that doorway would be there.
Yeah, in the front, in the front.
Do you know what I mean? So what
we
this
don't-
is, I don't know.
So we don't
that-
know
that
from
would
the
come
photo
into-
what's going on.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
We know it's, they're saying it's higher here though. This is in the BFE here, so that would impact that.
Right.
But
I see what you're saying, because if it was down here, the grading would be down here, but because it's up here, the grading
this
is
is
up higher.
outside. This is outside the zoning.
Oh, I thought that was inside the flood.
This
Was-
portion is.
Do you know what this trench is?
This is, yeah. But
So
this
is the flood zone line right here. So this section
this is
of
the,
building
okay. I was thinking this was the floodplain. So it's this around that, okay. I see what you're talking about, with elevations, okay. That's, it looks like to me that's pictures taken from over here, so unless the building's different than what.
And you just.
Whatever this, the plan looks nothing like the picture. The plan looks nothing like the picture. I'm having, I mean, this has a drainage pipe going to a building that doesn't show here at all. Catch basins don't seem to, if you're here, I guess that catch basin would be that catch basin maybe? Seems kind of fun, like,
Yeah, there's this one right there. But this showing, I mean, that's just a catch basin. That trench is coming from the building, so.
no, yeah, it could be sewer or something, yeah.
Or I don't know if they're piping the roof too. Hopefully I would prefer to see the roof daylighted out the rear, but
Right.
not right out to a road.
Would we have to list each order, or could we just say any and all orders that need to be met?
I'm not the legal guy on this commission, I don't know.
Anytime you issue an enforcement order, you want to really list everything that's there.
Get with that.
Just,
I mean, the fact of the matter is, if it hasn't been recorded, they shouldn't be doing the work. So we could issue an enforcement order to cease and desist and request the engineer to come in and explain exactly what they have. I mean, we're guessing from a proposed, we don't have an as-built, we're looking, is this a drain, is this a sewer? We have no idea. Can we just stop the work and bring them in? And that would be the most logical.
Eventually, that's what's going to happen, but how, I'm not an enforcement order expert, I don't know how it should be.
I would think the most critical order is that it needs to be recorded before any work starts, and it's not.
it needs to be recorded, and I would have them show us the changes from the approved plan. because what we're hearing is that that building's 4 feet higher, and show us where the compensatory storage areas are and where the floodplain fills are based on this new information. And if there's, these speculated changes that are going to happen going forward, then they should really refile. I mean, I from what I heard, it doesn't sound like I'd be in favor of an amended order for that type of a change. It's a significant change.
Yeah, I would highly agree with all that. Do you need a note taker, Angela, at the meetings?
She's got the video.
She's got the video she can look at.
Just to reiterate, my points are that the order's not recorded, the building elevations aren't in accordance with the approved project plans that we're hearing, and we need to see how they're going to mitigate the compensatory and fill storage based on that information. And I'd want to see updated plans from the project engineer for that. Right. And I wouldn't be in favor of lifting the cease and desist until I saw that.
I would agree with that, 100%. We're gonna wait till Angela stops writing. Keep writing if you need to. Okay. You got all the notes and stuff, okay. Any other discussion? All right, do I have a motion to issue an enforcement order with the list of Brad's, conditions? And first and foremost, a cease and desist until that is met and we meet with the engineer.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? Thank you. If you need to go to Staples to get more ink, just let us know, Angela.
I hope the computers are fixed.
All right, we're going to move on to old business. Manusnaut Brook, we still waiting on funding?
Yes.
Okay. Has there been any updates, any more discussion, any more movement, or we just...
We're kind of just trying to find different grants that would be able to be applying for this. I have to contact the foreman at DPW, so he may have an idea of a way to kind of get in there without damaging the area or accessing from the parking lots, because we have to close down the parking lots with the machinery there, which would cause an issue. I touched base with him this week to see if they ever got approval or follow up on that.
Okay, perfect. Hill Street, our kiosk update and trail map update.
Yes. So I worked with the Park and Rec as well as
Mary, you're in the way.
the IT department.
Move to you have 2 seats on the commission. Seniority.
Some of the volunteers had actually tracked the main trail for that area. That's the trail that most people use. It meets Mr. Brooks' requirement to be 400 feet away from the reservoir, as well as it's already there. We wouldn't have to, create or generate any funds to create a new trail. As well as, I have been in contact with CTEI. I guess they are the ones who have actually been building a lot of the kiosks for the city through the Park and Rec program. So I did contact the gentleman, Dan Bouchain, thank you. Dan Bouchain. I left him a couple messages to see if, the carpentry group would be willing to do this, since they've done it for the other cities. And then myself and the IT director can generate the signware and laminate it and have it attached on that way. So that would save probably about $700, give or take.
Okay.
I didn't have computers the past couple weeks, so I wasn't able to generate the rest of the sign, but I got the trail map.
Okay. So this would be, if I remember from the last meeting, the kind of standard Leominster rec sign.
Yes.
Instead of,
This would be the standard trail sign, and then we'd also have the conservation sign that you see around town, the white sign with the little stick figure symbols on it, what you can and can't do on the site, as well as I know we had discussed listing out the do's and don'ts and like the laws, which is what I'll be working on this week, generating that nice image
Okay.
that I have.
So looking at that sign, that main map, that pictures that we had,
Yes.
that map would be here.
Yes.
If that's kind of what we discussed. Instead of having the city of Leominster have, this is the,
Yeah, I feel like that would be more beneficial to people who are
Yeah, I mean,
using the trails.
if you're looking, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to show the piece of
Yeah.
property than
Yeah, the
overall.
city of Leominster,
city of Leominster
right.
map.
And then on the left side, just like on this one, I have listed out the, protecting our waters for the reservoir, the do's and don'ts, clean up after your dogs.
Okay.
And then there is already a conservation sign there on site that says, what you can and can't do.
Okay.
And then once that is all printed out and generated, I'll bring it to the next meeting.
So you have the ability to generate this sign
Yes,
on a piece of paper.
I will be working on it.
Okay.
How much was it again to just have it?
700 to 800, maybe even more.
Is that something we can ask the city council? I mean, they always I see appropriation for $100,000 for overtime for police or fire. And I mean, if we ask for $800 to get a sign made, it's outside the budget.
It's most definitely something if the commission wants to do that, I can most definitely create an appropriation. It'll take, I think it has to be presented 3 times before the city council, and then it could get approved.
And I mean, we'll probably need, CTI does good work, but there's still gonna be a charge for materials, so.
Right.
If we could, if that's something that is possible, we could get, their cost, to build the
A couple $100 for all the wood.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then get a package and say, hey, we need $1,500 to get this sign. If we can take a picture of one and kind of present it to the city council, see what it's being used for.
So that red line is the existing trail that's there on,
Yes.
is that the
There's-
only trail that's on site?
There are a couple other trails, going from the houses,
Okay.
who live up in the area, obviously.
But that's kind of a loop. I
Yeah,
guess
that's
the loop
that's
trail,
the
if you
main
want-
loop that, the Park and Rec uses, that most of the mountain bikers use. I've been looking at Strava.
And does this trail connect to others that go deeper? I thought I heard that mentioned at one of the meetings.
That was in the works. Mr. O'Brien and the Leominster Land Stewards were hoping to connect it to the Leominster State Forest, as well as there's some other trails on the Moosnook Trail. At this time, we were in contact briefly talking about a quote for everything, but I haven't heard from him since.
Well, while we're kind of looking at this, is the DPW going to be able to fit it in their schedule to do the
Yes,
meadow?
they said they'd be able to do the meadow.
Awesome.
That's on my list of things to check this week and see if it got done.
I just thought of it when I was looking at that. That's great.
Did you mark the trees yet?
I didn't, I'll go out there and.
Well, I'm not
Do
gonna,
some hiking this weekend, huh?
I'm not gonna ask them until you mark the trees.
Well, no, but you can see, I mean, we can just,
I'm just, yeah.
we got a measurement of how far in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because there's a substantial amount of them now, so. I mean, they're like 10 feet deep of, little small.
I'm assuming just cut and lay down for habitat, right? Would be their
Yeah.
plan. I mean, they wouldn't have to drag them or chip them.
No, I mean, I think in the past, they've just shipped them right into the woods,
Oh, okay.
because they had all the
Yeah, they don't
equipment
know
there.
where they just drive over them if they're small enough.
But there's a lot. I mean, there's so many of them that I think if they just cut and lay them, they'd be like stacks.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, last time they even took some of the bigger ones because it had been so long the last time, some of them grew like this big.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I guess they hauled some of it off and the rest they chipped, what they
Okay.
could.
And on the existing kiosk, because all the information will be going on this. I'm assuming maybe move the other conservation sign that's there, potentially put it,
Yeah, or
under
put
here.
a kiosk over it, whatever
And then
is
put the-
easier.
Because I know there was, we talked about having a map showing kind of the 500-foot buffer.
Yes.
Do we want to put that in the other kiosk?
I was going to work on seeing if I can have it overlaid onto this one.
Okay.
It's on it.
It's probably not a bad idea, because then it'll give people reference of, here's the trail. I mean, that's a pretty clear picture you see there.
Yeah.
Here's the trail, here's the properties. If you can, I mean, if you can put it all on one map, that's
I think it'd be a
fine as
little
well.
easier and like a less for, I would say less work for people to look at, but yeah, it's kind of all in one spot.
Yep,
And easy
yep.
to access.
Yeah, because when you're out there, you lose focus of where things are.
Even though they should know.
Okay. So we gotta come up with money. And you gotta finish the design. Well, now that you got a computer, I want it done by midnight. Thoughts or questions?
I think it's great that we have the map, you know.
Yeah, no, this is really a good picture and map. What, I remember seeing a property line for this property. How, do you have kind of like the property lines? I'm just trying to figure out the, not that
Okay,
it
so
really
I was like,
matters,
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do have access to on the other map that has a 500-foot radius, so I could have that over. I could try and have that all over.
I don't want it too busy. I'm just trying to figure out like,
Or the Cutler Estate.
yeah,
Or at least city-owned, anyway.
right, yeah.
Separate the
something
private-owned
like that,
from city-owned.
Okay.
You know,
Because there might be land out here that's also owned by the city that it can all be,
And then,
yeah.
you know, included together in like one color, like blue or something or whatever.
I know.
That one's a-
Yeah, and I know the property was like multiple parcels.
yeah, it's kind
Just
of
even if it just had the outline to say this is the land for this
Right.
park, and then you don't want to get too busy, but I thought that might be good. Good job, Angela. I like that picture.
can't take credit for it. Thank you. I feel like partial credit for it.
Did you print it and hang it on the board?
I hung on the board,
I'll take credit
the IT
then.
director
Take
helped
credit.
me.
Take credit.
The business director.
Good. So, the high school, where we stand with them? You contacted them?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for a call back.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to talk, obviously if they've done it for the city, they must know, we need
Yeah.
so much lumber, and we need, like, I agree with Larry, we don't have it in the budget, which, unless you want to take a pay cut, that's about the only place I saw for the budget. If we're going to have to go to city council and just say, hey, we want $1,500, or, whatever that total comes to do it all, so.
I can even see if Park and Rec, I'm not really sure if they have funds for it, 'cause I know that they did like Prospect Street, they did a lot of the other
Right.
conservation owned land, so I'm not really, we briefly talked about it at a department head meeting, we weren't able to really.
Okay. Good plan. I like it.
It's good.
Larry, don't mark those trees, will you?
All right.
Comments, questions? All right. We're good, so update us at the next meeting, Angela. It'd be nice if we could have if you can,
Yeah, I'll try my best.
to get a nice color picture of what the sign is gonna look like and potentially what's gonna be on that sign, which we know.
Yeah.
We talked about that, so.
Angela, do you have any of the, like a wetland flagging tape?
I do. It's blue and black, I think, but yeah, I have
If I can
some.
grab some of that, I can just tie it off
Yeah.
to some of the trees.
Perfect. I don't need to
Oh, it's really
I
only
don't
a
need to
couple,
write
once
that
they see
down.
the depth, it's all by eye, you can kind of tell.
Yeah,
Just if you
I think
mark
it's-
a few spots.
There's a market, they'll leave it up to them, because either they won't cut enough, or they'll cut way too much.
Well, I don't think they can cut so much.
They're trying to do the best they can.
Yeah, no, but there's not enough time to do more than what we need. They may not even have time to get, so maybe we have to focus on one section, like maybe we focus on one side one year and one side the other if they can, but
Right,
I'll mark it.
okay,
I'll grab some of that.
Okay, yeah.
perfect. All right, what's that? Anybody in the public like to speak at this point? Yes, sir.
Is that picture going to be available for us to look at? I can't figure out what it is from here. I'm just curious.
That's a map of somebody walked the trail with their GPS, and that is the outline of the existing trail that's on the site.
Is that in the woods?
Yes.
I'm trying to see, what is all the white stuff on the right?
Those are houses.
Yeah, so,
I think Mr. He emailed it to you.
yeah, so this is the Lost View Farm here.
The what?
This is that farmhouse,
Oh, the what?
and this is Hill Street right here. So this is.
So where the driveways crisscross is your house and Pete's house.
Oh, see that crisscross driveway?
Yeah, so here's the farm, and here,
Okay.
this little dot is the White House.
Okay,
Is it Mr. Flynn? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Mr. So this is just the trail, existing trail as
so
a.
that's actually west. Oh, Hill Street, okay.
Now, they're gonna go up the existing trail that's already there to the right to get up to that, or are you making new paths
Nope.
to get up?
There's gonna be it looks like we don't have to add any trails.
Yeah.
We're gonna add a
You're just gonna
little.
go up that right side that's already all
Yep.
clear.
Well,
Yeah, if you're looking
yeah.
at the lot from the street, it goes up that way.
Yeah, it's like that straight line that,
Yeah, okay.
I think it's like the main trail that most people use. I do know there's a couple others in the area, but I think those are more so, people who maybe live in the area or frequent the area kind of have like their own like little cut throughs.
I mean, it's a definite path you can see.
Yeah, I was like, this one looks obvious, it's like the,
Our focus would be to disturb as least as possible, so we'll have to figure out where the parking area is, but that's our focus, is to leave that as the trailhead, what's existing there, and not to really add anything more.
Is that picture going to be available in City Hall? We could look at it during the week.
Best way would be
Yeah.
for her to email it
I
to
can
you. or
email
get
you,
it
you
to
can stop
you.
by my office. I always recommend calling first, because sometimes I do have to run out of the office.
But basically, our plan is obviously to put it on the site, on the big map.
Angela, you email it to me.
Okay, thank you, yeah. I'm like, I'll get it to you, I promise, but you're more than welcome to come to my office, of course, but.
And that's what we're talking about, is the sign that we're proposing to put up is a kind of a standard Leominster sign. And right now, the signs have the City of Leominster map, and we're talking about putting this there instead of the City of Leominster. And on there, we'll have, obviously, that's the trail map. We're gonna put the 500-foot buffers, and then kind of property lines, so people, when they're there, they can start referencing, okay, here's the line for hunting, the 500-foot hunting line, and then here's the trail. You can get a better sense while you're out there to figure that out, instead of letting people guess. So, like I said, this is something that someone had given us from doing the GPS, but we want to make it very clear on where all the boundaries are, and hunting zones and no hunting zones and all of that on that map. And eventually that'll be right on the site in the thing, but Angela can get it to you sooner so you can look at it, it's fine.
It won't have all like the little hunting things on it, but it'll be this, just what we have
It'll be
here.
at least
Okay.
that until,
I don't know how much time I'll have this week.
right, so. So, any other discussions? Okay, perfect.
I know who you are, I think I have your email, so I send that to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Certificates of compliance, Pier Street, because I drove by it the other day and I looked, but unfortunately I was going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. So I saw it and I said I should stop and look, but I did not. But have you seen?
I went out there today. There's actually quite a bit of stabilization on the side near the brook.
Okay.
The other side's also stabilizing really well. The area around the telephone pole that was originally disturbed, I know was an area of concern. Mr. Van Dyke was confused because that wasn't, he didn't feel that was on the plans to be reseeded, but I did explain that the commission would like that to be stabilized. So he did go out there and seed it, as well as I went out to the site and I did notice that he had put a dumpster right at the top of the resource area by the house. I told him that now that area would have to be restabilized as well. I went out there today. I did see that they did seed it. Probably seeded it on Thursday or Friday of last week after the conversation I had with him. So it's not growing there, but the direct areas along the brook has very quite thick grass, surprisingly.
Now, when you say seed, do you mean hydro seed or just seed thrown with?
It wasn't the blue hydro seed, and it doesn't look like it was a seed thrown. It looks like it was a heavy-duty layer of seeding. I don't know I don't know the exact.
Tackifier or no tackifier?
That's what I'm, yeah, like, basically hydro seed usually has something to hold, it's got some
Yeah, it
cool
looks like
layer.
it
Like someone went up and
stuck, yeah.
sprayed and, you know what I mean, so, okay.
But I do know the last round of seeding, it grew within a week. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of in the growing season, it's still warm enough during the day, so I'd like to see more growth if that area's not growing yet.
Is that the updated set?
No, this is still the original set. Thoughts?
I think we need to see some
Just wait.
vegetation. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think, I mean, everybody comes in and it's urgent, you know, but,
Right.
you know, if it's not stable, if there's no vegetation, you know, it doesn't matter how urgent it is for other purposes, that's one of the conditions that we set.
Right.
And they know that ahead of time. They could have planned it, you know, they could have stabilized it a month, 2 months ago.
Correct. Thank you. So we'll leave it on the agenda. Extension permits, DEP 199640.
Mr. Chairman, I'll abstain from discussion and/or voting, but I'm free to answer any questions.
What has the applicant offered to us?
I sent you guys all of the emails with the notice of intent in the original order. I also have the folders here as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
I know I had a lot of concerns at the last meeting where we initially started discussing it, mainly just based on making sure we had all the information. I've reviewed what our agent's given us. I'm okay with it now.
Okay. I will say I reviewed it very briefly, but that notwithstanding, any other questions or comments from any commission members? Do I have a motion to issue an extension or something else?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we issue an extension permit for Exchange Street, DEP file number 199-640.
For how long?
I would, was there a specific time in the request, Angela, do you remember?
I think 30 days is good.
There was no specific time.
3 days.
Well, knowing where this project stands, I'm gonna speculate they're not gonna start building on it next week.
Yeah,
So I would suggest if the commission's okay, we just issue the 3-year extension.
Okay. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed and abstained? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any new communications? It says none here. Has anything come in since?
I did receive a notice of intent today for 158 Crawford Street. That will be on there for the next meeting. I believe I sent out digital copy and the doodle out to everyone this morning or afternoon.
Okay. Did everybody review the August 28th meeting minutes?
I did not review the minute.
Okay. Did anybody else, and can they vote on it?
I did not review them.
Okay, then we'll leave it on the next agenda, please. Any new business?
Not at this time.
Okay. Emergency certifications,
None at this time.
project updates. I had one for you and I totally cannot remember what it was, but
I have a small one.
Sure.
The Route 13 work that's been done by MassDOT, they did record the order of conditions last week, so
okay.
that came in.
Anything else? Not seeing anything. Budget? You have, oh, you probably don't have.
I didn't have time today, but I was trying to get all the major
Right.
things done.
Not a
for the
problem.
meeting, as well as the agent's report.
You don't have that either, correct. Chairman's report. I do not have a chairman's report. I will tell you, after developments on the Willow Street thing, if there's no objections, I will take the lead on that. If people do not have a problem with that, or we can adjust it as we go, but if the applicant or the owner does not want Angela, I will, I guess, take the communications lead as the chairman, or someone else can volunteer. See,
I think you just wait and see how the process goes.
well, that's kind of what I was going to do.
Pretty adamant they're going to appeal it, but
Yeah, I mean, I was not going to reach out or anything, but
Right.
I guess I just wanted to say I'll send them my way if and when we do. So, our next meeting is October 23rd, the deadline of October 11th. And do we have anything else to discuss or any concerns? Yes, sir.
we have a letter in front of us.
Oh, I do apologize. That was for a project update request. It was brought to my attention that there was some work being done down in the floodplain by the mall. It was for a Popeyes that's being put in there. It came before the department as a technical review, and since it's out of the floodplain, they didn't have to file.
Okay, back up 1 second. This is what concerns me. I've read through this already since it was here. Are you making a determination that it's out of the floodplain based on elevation, or it's actually not within the two-dimensional floodplain map area?
Based on elevation, I think it says it on there.
Okay. That's how I read this letter too, but
Yeah,
that's
it was
not,
based on
that's not how the
elevation.
process should fold out. If they're within that zone, it's gonna be a zone A, there's a BFE. If they're within that zone A, that shaded area on the flood map, then they're within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. It's not up to them to self-regulate, well, do I meet the performance standards, am I above the base flood elevation, et cetera. That's no different than somebody coming in and saying, well, I'm doing buffer zone work, but I'm using erosion control, I'm not impacting the wetlands, so I'm okay. So this, based on what I'm reading in this letter, there should have been an application in front of the Conservation Commission for this.
Okay.
Whether it's an RDA or a notice of intent, there should have been something before us because they are within our jurisdiction based on the regulations.
So that area is on the map, if
Right.
you want to call it that. Okay.
This whole site used to, McCarty Engineering used to come in every 3 years and ask for an extension. And what they did is they kept the original file open from when the mall was built, and they had a maintenance plan. And every so many years they'd come in and they'd update us on, what was being done. If there was a new building being proposed, they'd bring all that stuff for us because they had all the calculations, because there was like compensatory flood storage from when the original mall was built. And I think they usually had to they might have to take it from somewhere else. And
Yeah, and again, a lot of that stuff, the flood storage bank and was what I would call it, and some other things I take some exception to based on what I'm reading in the regs. And I know I've talked to other people about this when I was new to this commission. Hey, have you ever heard of these types of scenarios? So I'm kind of a little nervous about this maintenance order, for instance, that allows new construction.
Oh, no, it didn't allow new
Well,
construction.
you said it allows them to do buildings.
Well, they put in, like Ramsey, when they came in for like Ramsey rehab area, that they filed for that.
Okay, so they're doing separate notices then when they have buildings.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they just, they would come in and update us, like, they did a project where they had to repave an area.
Right.
So we had to make sure that they ground down and didn't, in one area, they actually raised they raised the elevation a little bit.
Right, and that's getting to my concern with something like this. Sure, this is what the project is intended to be, but it's really up to the commission to review, are they meeting performance standard for work within land subject to flooding? It's up to us to determine, are they above or below that base flood elevation based on what the engineer has given to us. It's not up to them to say, we're out of it, we don't need to come before you. And also, what type of application we would want to see in that instance, because we know with certain projects, there's a potential for problems. And everything is site-specific, sometimes developer-specific as well. And if there's a history with certain projects, things of that nature, I have no idea who's building this, but just reading the letter, I was a little bit concerned we never saw it, because based on experience here and what we talked about on Lock Drive tonight, things don't always get constructed according to plan. So if you've let someone off the hook somehow for even coming in front of the commission, there's no way to regulate what happened if there's an issue or the developers said what they didn't want to do. In fact, I'll backstep, there is a way to regulate because he doesn't have determination from the Conservation Commission, so technically doing work here violates the Wetlands Protection Act. It's within our jurisdiction. If they've done this work, they don't have an order of negative determination, we could still call them in for it. That being said, I guess I'd open it up to, is there any issues with it? Is there something?
Not that I can see. Marco did help me with this. Marco and Kristen Kelly, the former planning director, because I think it was like this letter is on May 15th, but they come in.
I saw the date. Yeah.
A couple weeks in, and Marco was looking at a training meeting, and he said because it was out of the floodplain elevation, it wasn't going to need to come for the Conservation Commission. So that's why.
Yeah, that information's wrong. So just moving forward, if they're within that 2D flood map, they're in that zone. They need to come before us for a minimum of determination or a formal filing.
Larry, you would know better, you've been on the commission on this. I mean, pretty much if it's at the mall, it's almost our floodplain.
Yeah, that's why Mr. McCarty would, anytime, he would come in every 3 years no matter what, but if there was a project, he would always reference those plans, and, like they had the records back to the 60s, they had everything. I think they switched engineers or something, because...
I could go on all night with my concerns about that approach.
Yeah.
With the WPA, but that's, it's fluid at this point. But, if it came before us in the future, I'd discuss it.
Yeah.
Question. So what do we do? Because they're down there working.
I mean, if our prior agent was working with our current agent, who was just starting to work for us at that particular time, and they've already had the discussion and told the project proponents, this is the process, you're all set. What I would ask at this point is if you believe they are meeting the Wetland Protection Act standards, leave them be. If not, then we need to know and we need to do something as a commission. But I'd hate to, I don't want to jump in on this half a year later if everything's going well to plan, and that was the process they were explained as they came in informally or formally through the building and planning board. I just wanted to make it clear that this really shouldn't be the process. It should really come to us.
But is there any work being done in the So there's no work being done, but even with them, when they're digging down for the foundation, aren't they, if they're putting in a slab, aren't they adding impervious at the floodplain elevation?
I can get the maps tomorrow. Where they're putting it is not within near the floodplain zone. It's like the only area that's above it.
But if they're digging down and putting in a slab, depending on how,
A lot of times what happens, Larry, is those 2D floodplains, particularly older maps like Leominster currently has, they were based on old USGS topos, which was, they were 3-meter contours, so you're talking almost 10 feet. So anything could be within 10 feet distance. So those shaded hatched areas tend to be conservative. They grabbed a lot of floodplain that really wouldn't necessarily be floodplain based on the hydraulic analysis that they do to create that base flood elevation. So it's possible that, sure, it's within that 2D floodplain zone A, but there are contours well above that BFE that exist within that area. So, normal course of action, they submit an application to us, we look at something like that, and if we think, oh, yeah, we agree, then you issue them a negative determination or an order, and it's pretty simple. They don't have to do compensatory or something of that nature. But yeah, so just because they're digging in that area doesn't necessarily mean they're within the floodplain BFE.
yeah.
But the 2D floodplain area brings it into our jurisdiction. And knowing the problems and how projects change, I think we really need to make sure when it's in our jurisdiction, we at least get a cursory review of it. Any other discussion on that? Would you like to finish reading the letter, or we good?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not, I mean, there's so many, I know we had another project before, and I didn't get a chance, we had like a informal meeting, because we couldn't have the whole commission there, and they brought out those floodplain numbers.
I remember that.
And then, but they never brought it to the meeting, and just, so there was actually no documentation, so if we lose, I just don't want to be losing floodplain storage capacity, because that mall is just, they just
All
keep popping.
floodplain, right?
They keep adding buildings, they want to add, they added one, over by Panera Bread, now they want to add this one. I mean,
They submit a site plan for it to the planning board?
Yes, they have a slight.
So you have an actual site plan, okay.
Yes.
So I would suggest that you take a look at that, take a look at the site. If it looks like it makes sense, or if you're having trouble figuring out if it makes sense, contact us, we can look at it too, and go from there. But if this was the process they were explained many months ago, I'd hate to pull them in front of the commission at this point.
right, unless, I mean, if it does, yeah.
So let's look at the record plans from the other boards, and the building inspector's office, the planning board, and if they meet those, and unless we see something with the record plan. But chances are, if they submit it to the planning board what they said here, then it's going to be in compliance with the WPA as well. But,
Yeah.
You good? All right. Any other further discussion on this or any other item? Seeing nothing, I declare this meeting adjourned.